auxiliaries. So auxiliary send and returns, a little different than inserts. So quick little review. If we look at our image here, we can remind ourselves that an auxiliary send and return, the signal is passing through the track, but a portion of it is getting sent away to the processor. Now the common processors that we use here are reverb and delay. And so in this example, we're going to use some reverb. So what I have here is in Pro Tools, our sends can be viewed, if I hold Command and click on this, either as assignments or individually. Same thing, holding Command. So I'm going to look at these individually because as I add my auxiliaries, I can view them and adjust them here in the sends view. Okay, so what I'm going to do is click on this, and I've got the same options as before. I have all my interface, my audio outputs, my physical outputs, as well as my buses to send my signal to different parts of my mix. And what we're going to use here is we're going to use buses. So I'm going to start with bus 5 and 6. As you can see, these other ones show as being used because they were used in transferring those MIDI tracks. But I'm going to use bus 5 and 6. And we're going to just click on this to get rid of our floating window. And we're going to solo our choir. Choir overhead's what we're doing. And what I want to show you here is you notice that nothing really changes to the original signal when I adjust the level of this output. So it's just sending a portion of the signal off. It has no effect on the output of this track. Okay, so really a auxiliary send and return has to have a return to really do something. If we don't have a return, it's just kind of pointless. So we're going to set up the return, and we're going to click on the soprano track here, Command Shift N for new track, and I'm going to do a stereo aux input. And that's what's going to function as our auxiliary return. Hit create, and what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use this same bus 5 and 6, and I'm going to make that my input on this track. And it's good to realize that these inputs and outputs, really the input is kind of like, if we're going from top to bottom, it's really like it's happening here on the top of the track and the output's happening here. So if we send our signal over here to this track, it's going to come to this track before it goes to any of the inserts or level adjustments or panning adjustments and such. And so it's really important to look at it that way. So I'm going to solo this track as well, and we're going to hit play. Okay, so watch what happens and listen when I adjust this. It makes it louder because all we're doing is just sending more signal to our mix. We're not doing anything to it, so it's just getting louder. Okay, it's just doubling the signal. Okay, and if we send too much, we can clip the track. Okay, so what we need to do is put a plug in there. So this is where it gets kind of confusing because we're doing an auxiliary send and return, but we have to use an insert to get the plug-in inserted in the signal path. And so we're going to use our little deverb here. And the difference now is we're going to keep it 100% wet instead of just using it as a regular insert, because we're going to keep all of our dry signal right here in this track and our wet signal over here. So now watch what happens as I give it some more. Sending more signal to the reverb. You can see how I got more signal here, and we can hear that reverb. Okay, now notice how I had to solo both these tracks. If I take this solo off, hit the Command key and click on it, I've got what's called solo safe. So now I get the same effect. Okay, so I can hear that auxiliary track without having to solo it. Okay, and the beauty of this now is the real benefit of putting reverb on an auxiliary send and return instead of individual tracks is I can take an option click, copy and paste basically my signal, my send to all these tracks, and now if I solo all these, I can send my whole choir to the same reverb. Okay, so if we go, you can adjust the level of each of these individually how much is being sent to the reverb, and we have individual control of how much each one is getting the reverb on it, but we're not having to put a deverb on each individual track. So that's one of the big benefits of using reverb on an auxiliary send and return. So we can do the same thing with our delay as well.